Welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective with Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. Planning for your financial future means navigating challenges like market volatility, inflation, and retirement income. Pankinen Financial Perspective is here to help by addressing common financial concerns, sharing valuable strategies, and exploring ways you can work toward your financial goals. Now let's get started with Pankinen Financial Perspective.
Hello and welcome to the Pankinen Financial Perspective. My name is Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 952-873-2703 or visit us online at pankinenfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. And while my website, click on the radio page to check out past shows or to subscribe to our program on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Also out my page, click the link at the top to get the latest retirement guide. If you've ever tried to budget by tracking every purchase, you know how it goes. It works for a few days, maybe a week, and then you miss a day or two and suddenly catching up feels like a chore you'd rather skip altogether. There's actually a different approach that flips the whole process around, and today we're going to talk about why it might be easier to stick with. It's called the anti-budget, and the idea is simple. Instead of monitoring every dollar you spend, you move the money towards savings and essentials first, and whatever's left in your account after that is yours to use freely, no tracking required. It's a concept that fits nicely into a kind of practical, sustainable financial planning I talk about with clients all the time. And I think by the end of today's show, a lot of listeners are going to feel like this is something they can actually put into practice. But before we get into the details, let me bring in my co-host, Tony Shore, who I can always count on to ask the questions our listeners are thinking.
I hope so. I don't know. My questions, my mind works a little differently. So hopefully
yes,
I will.
It does.
Yes. Most people would agree. It's like, why is he asking Ashton about pizza? I thought we were talking about financial
diversification. And
yeah. What do pizza, chickens, and snowblowers have to do with any of that? Hopefully I will be asking the questions that our listeners want to know the answers to. I love what you said there. You had me at no tracking required. I love that. I love to hear anti-budget because budget is a dirty word to most. It's it's the B word, budget, and it is a dirty word. It can be, but you know what? People do need to get a handle on their spending. I don't care how well off you are or your situation. You need to know where your money is going before you get to retirement. That's the only way you're going to be able to have a proper plan in place to make sure you're going to have enough and get a good, solid financial plan in place.
Correct.
So, and my wife and I, we like to sit down once a month and look at it. We take we go online and look at our checking account for the last month. And then we take our credit card statement and look at where that's gone. And we'll figure it out if we're like, what's that? And we'll look it up and okay. We're like, wow, where did we spend all this money this month? Okay. And then we find subscriptions we're not using. We find charges that we could have avoided. We see things, hey, let's not do this next month, right? and then that gets us on track. We're able to save more. We've got a better handle and we sleep better at night. For sure. But if you know what your essential spending is, then you don't necessarily have to track or worry about what's left over. It's guilt-free spending after that, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing on it is, again, having that guilt-free spending if you stick to the budget. And it's crazy nowadays, Tony, with, there's a lot of people earning very good incomes that are still living paycheck to paycheck just because of that spending creep and the amount of debt that people that make $200,000 have. It shouldn't be that way. And so again, the budget is a big thing.
No. Yeah. I mean, there's people out there making really good money, six figures, mid six figures. And like you say, they live paycheck to paycheck because they never look at what they're spending. They don't know where things are going. And nowadays, no matter how much or little you make, you can get caught up in everything subscription based. You can say, hey, I'm going to try this, or I want to see this site. And before you know it, you've got 100 subscriptions for different things out there. We had so many and we weeded out. I mean, we subscribed to a lot of online newspapers, magazines, services. And it really helped when we freed up, without even thinking 1 month, we looked at it and freed up $200 a month. And that's nice. $200 that can be put into an IRA or
funding that Roth or whatever,
or building up your emergency fund, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, you mentioned subscriptions is that monthly thing. It's $20 here. It doesn't matter. Same with vehicle payments. Hey, I can get a car for $250 a month or $400 a month. And actually the average car payment's gone up to like over $500
exponentially. Yeah.
A month. And, and then all of a sudden you're about ready to pay it off and, hey, I need a new car. Well, need is a strong word there.
I need a Corvette. I don't know why, Ashton. I don't know why you, as a financial advisor, or my wife, have a hard time wrapping your head around why I need a Corvette. But
I think you look really good cruising down 169 to Highway 60 to get to Fulda or Worthington area in a Corvette, Tony.
Yeah, 169 and 60 would never be the same. No, it's a good thing I don't own a Corvette, and I would never spend that money. No offense to those who do. I'm just jealous, I guess. Yeah.
Well, let's begin by breaking down a recent Kiplinger article. Tired of tracking every dollar you spend? You need an anti-budget. So let's talk about how that anti-budget actually works, Tony, because it really does come down to straightforward things. The first thing is automating those essentials. That means your rent, your mortgage, utilities, insurance, any minimum debt payments, the non-negotiables, those get handled automatically so you never have something to think about or remember. The second is automating your savings and investments before anything else. This is that pay yourself first principle. We've talked about it before on the show. And it's one of the most powerful shifts someone can make in how they think about money. Instead of saving whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month, you move your money to that future self first, and then you live on what remains. And then that third piece, Tony, is just to simply spending what's left based on what matters most to you that month without that guilt. We talked about that guilt-free spending. And the other nice thing is you don't need that spreadsheet here, and without having to make 100 of small decisions every day in a typical budget.
Yeah. So your flex spending or your, spending what's left, not having to track that is freeing. And it sounds almost too good to be true. Is it really just that simple?
Yeah, it can be. And, there's real research behind why. Vanguard, How to Save America 2025 report, which is highlighted in this Kiplinger article, looked at savings behavior across millions of workers and found that automatic contributions are consistently linked to higher participation and better retirement outcomes. And when the important decisions are made once and then run in the background, people follow through far more reliably than when they have to make those same decisions over and over again. So automating them is big there. And traditional budgeting asks you to make a dozen of micro decisions every single day. And that's exactly where most people run into trouble, not because they don't care about their finances, but because that type of system is just really hard to sustain. So the setup that actually lasts and the ones that were critical in the pieces to happen is that automation, and everything else stays simple enough that you don't have to dread it.
Yeah. Well, so what you're saying is, Ashton, that it's less about willpower and more about building a system that does the work for you, right?
Yeah, exactly, Tony. That's the distinction. I think it's really important, especially for anyone who's ever felt like they failed at budgeting. Again, that naughty word, budgeting. It may not have been a discipline problem at all. It may have just been a design problem. So let's talk about something that actually puts this into practice, because the good news is that for most people, this is something you can set up in a single afternoon. The first step is identifying those essentials. Those are the expenses that are going to be there no matter what. Rent, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, transportation, minimum debt payments, childcare if you're in that stage of life there.
Pizza.
And the pizza, yes. Well, no, that's not the essential one.
Oh no, that goes in my list. You said you were going to list the expenses that exist no matter what. And if
that might be essential for Tony.
By the true definition, that expense for me is going to exist no matter what.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding. That should be in my anti-budget spending category
for sure. Yeah. Well, and then the key question to ask yourself is, would I cancel this tomorrow without much debate? And if the answer is yes, it probably doesn't belong in the essentials column. Those streaming services you mentioned, impulse subscriptions, and things you sign up for and forgot about, those don't count. And the tighter that list is, the clearer your financial baseline becomes on what you actually need on a month-to-month basis to cover those essentials.
Yeah, like going through the drive-through to get coffee every day, buying records to listen to. But that's a useful filter. You're talking about. It takes some of the guesswork out of it, and I think that's good.
Yeah, it really does. And once you have those essentials identified, the next step is deciding the savings and investing targets. And this happens before anything else gets spent. So think about what your money needs to do for you. Retirement contributions, building that emergency fund if you haven't yet, setting aside money for expenses are coming down the road, like an insurance premium or maybe a big move. And if you want to start, if a simple starting point, a common guideline suggests directing around 20% of your income towards savings and extra debt payments if you have those, and after covering essentials. And so it's not a hard rule, but it gives you kind of a number to work with rather than just leave you guessing. A lot of times we recommend that 15% go into those retirement accounts. Yeah. And then that extra 5 can go towards savings or extra debt payments.
Right. And once those targets are set, I assume this is where the automation piece comes in, correct? And I love the automation aspect of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You set up direct deposit splits. So a portion of your paycheck goes straight into your savings or investments before it ever lands in your checking account, or maybe it's that salary deferral inside of 401k. And you schedule those automatic transfers for the day after payday while the money's still sitting there. And once those pieces are in place, the decision's already been made for you. You don't have to revisit it every week or every day. And so what remains in your checking account is simply your spending money. And some people find it helpful to keep that in a separate account or maybe a dedicated debit card. So there's a clear visual boundary. And when that balance gets low, that's your signal to slow down without looking at the spreadsheet, no tracking app, and no guilt.
Yeah, no guilt. I love that. The two words that are important here. And I like that it removes the mental load from everyday spending.
Yeah. And one last piece I'd like to keep, for keeping those priorities visible. It doesn't have to be elaborate. In fact, a short note on your phone is enough. Something like build a $5,000 emergency fund or max out my IRA this year, my Roth IRA this year. When you can see what you're working toward, it's easier to stay connected to your strategy, even when you're not actively thinking about it. You can also decide in advance what happens when you hit that milestone. For example, once your emergency fund reaches a certain level, you can redirect that same automatic transfer toward investing instead. And again, the system keeps you moving forward without you having to reinvent it every few months.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is key right there. I like that. Now, before we continue with this conversation, I want to jump in here and say, hey, we probably have listeners and viewers that say, hey, I need a financial plan in place. I don't have a solid retirement plan in place. I'm in my 50s, or I'm getting closer to retirement in my 60s, or I'm in retirement and I feel like I need to know where I'm at or get a second opinion. How can they get a hold of you and the team there at Pankin & Financial to get this in place?
Yeah, just give us a call, 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703. Or you can visit our website, pankinandfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. Scheduling a consultation only takes a few minutes, and we're always happy to work around your schedule.
All right. Thanks for that. Now, what's next on today's agenda?
Now, there's a concept woven into the anti-budget that I think is worth naming directly, and that's intentional spending. Intentional spending doesn't mean being restrictive. It just really means building a habit of pausing and asking yourself, is this purchase moving me towards something I care about, or just filling a moment? It's a small question, but over time, it makes a real difference. And research actually supports this. We tend to feel better about money when we spend it in ways that align with our values, whether that's investing in experiences with people we love or just simply simplifying our day-to-day lives in ways that can reduce stress.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think removing stress is going to be key.
Yes.
Right. That's great. So how do you see this play out in real life with real people?
Yeah. Think about someone who stopped trying to log every expense, but never missed a retirement contribution because that contribution was automated and tied to something meaningful. Or, someone who's starting out to set up automatic savings towards a security deposit, and then they let the rest of their paycheck cover everyday life without guilt. This system, protected by the priority and everything else, felt free because it is. And so this is also especially relevant for people whose income isn't the same every month, like freelancers, independent contractors, anyone with that variable income situation. A system that demands constant tracking can tend to fall apart when the numbers keep changing, if that monthly income is different every month. And so what holds up is securing the essentials and future goals first, and then letting the rest support the life and the work that we care about without needing to monitor every dollar coming in.
Yeah. And it really does seem like a more sustainable way to think about money, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems to be common sense.
Yeah, that's the goal. Sustainable beats perfect every time. If you can't sustain this, there's no point to doing it. So I want to be straightforward about something, because any approach that, to managing money has trade-offs, and the anti-budget is no exception here. The main risk is the spend the rest can quietly expand over time if you never check in. Lifestyle drift that we talked about earlier in the show, it's real. And without any guardrails at all, the freedom from that anti-budget can actually work against you. But the good news is you don't need a complicated system to prevent that. A few simple boundaries can go a long way. One approach is to keep your discretionary spending in a dedicated account. And when it's empty, you're done for the month with no shame, no spiral, and just a natural stopping point. And then some people also find it helpful to set soft limits in specific categories that tend to creep up, maybe that pizza budget or record budget, anything like that.
Yeah.
Capping those delivery apps at a set amount per month and switching to groceries once you hit it, or, that small guardrail can really make a big impact over time.
Yeah, having guardrails set up and in place is part of what you do for people, and that's a big part of the planning. But what about those bigger expenses that don't show up every month? Things like maybe you pay your car insurance quarterly or twice a year, or holiday travel. Sometimes there's big quarterly bills or expenses that come up.
Yeah, that's a great point. And those are what people call some lumpy expenses, because they're predictable, but they don't fit neatly into that monthly budget. So the solution is sinking funds, small automatic transfers each month into a dedicated account. So the money's already there when that bill arrives. It keeps that large irregular expense from feeling like a financial emergency. Another practical note here is to be aware that autopay follows the calendar, not your pay schedule. So, it helps to adjust due dates where possible, or simply keep a cushion in that account that those autopays are coming out of. So even one full paycheck's worth might be a buffer that can prevent a small timing mismatch from turning into overdraft fees.
Yeah, when my wife and I first started really getting into sitting down once a month and budgeting, that is something that we had to adjust, because we had all our bills were in the first week. Right. And we get paid twice a month, right? We don't get paid for the whole month up front. So, and we were spending too much the month before and not letting it carry over. So we wanted to spread it out. And so we actually contacted a lot of the companies where our regular bills, some will let you, not all. Sometimes you can move your due date. And say, nice. Hey, I want my due date. We want our due date for this credit card or this utility bill or whatever. Can you change it? And for some things you can actually do that. Otherwise you do have to, like you said, adjust due dates wherever possible. So think about that. We like to spread it out because we do our budget by weeks, like week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4 of the month. And so that works. But for somebody who's been tracking every expense up until now, switching to this new approach, it could even seem a little unsettling at first, I bet.
Yeah, it can. And there's no need to go cold turkey. That first month or two, you can keep a light eye on 1 or 2 categories that tend to drift, like your dining out or online shopping. And you're not tracking everything, just spot checking the areas where you're vulnerable. And once you see the system holding up, that confidence builds on its own.
Yeah. Well, where do we start, though? If somebody thinks this sounds appealing, but maybe a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah. First, you want to start small. Automate one savings transfer or put a fixed bill on auto pay. Choose one clear financial priority for that month and fund it consistently. And then let that run for a few weeks and just notice how it feels. For a lot of people, that lighter feeling that comes with knowing the important thing is already handled is exactly what motivates them to build from there. The anti-budget isn't about doing everything perfectly from day one. It's about building a system that works quietly in the background so your financial life doesn't require constant effort and attention. And for anyone who's felt frustrated or defeated by traditional budgeting, that can be a genuinely different experience.
Right. And I think that's a really encouraging note. I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes the best financial advice is to just start. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And if you're not sure where to start or how the anti-budget approach fits into your larger financial picture, that's exactly the kind of conversation worth having with a financial advisor. Everyone's situation is different. An experienced advisor can help build a system that's designed around your life rather than relying on just a generic template.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is great. We're talking about this. Honestly, doesn't the phrase financial freedom mean something different to everyone out there?
Yeah, that's exactly right question to ask. And it's one I love talking about with clients because the anti-budget, the automation, the saving habits, they're all tools. But the real goal underneath all of this is more financial freedom. And that's what it actually means is, something we're going to dig into right now because it looks different for every single person. So there's another Kiplinger article titled The 4-Step Guide to True Financial Freedom from a Financial Professional that frames this really well. And I want to go through it as we wrap up today's show.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these steps. What's the first one you want to mention?
Yeah, the first step is simply defining what financial independence means to you. For some people, it's the ability to retire early. For the others, it's able to travel or spend time with family or just stop living paycheck to paycheck. According to a 2025 Goldman Sachs retirement survey, 42% of working Americans are currently in that paycheck to paycheck cycle. And when you're there, financial freedom can feel out of reach. But the article makes an important point. It's not a fixed destination. It evolves. And the key is to starting with a clear, honest picture of what you're working toward so you have that direction.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that clarity makes every other financial decision easier then, doesn't it?
It really does, Tony, which brings us to step 2, building a system that can create wealth. And you notice this connects directly with everything we've talked about in the first half of the show. Automate that saving and investing and give every dollar a purpose. Build what the article calls compounding machines, which are things like retirement accounts, index funds, real estate that grow quietly in the background over time. Protect your downside with an emergency fund. Appropriate insurance and by avoiding high interest debt. And where possible, work toward diversifying your income so that you're not entirely dependent on a single source.
Yeah. And that last one feels like a longer term goal for most people.
It is, Tony. And that's okay. These steps are not a checklist you complete in a weekend. Step 3 is reducing debt and expenses. And I want to be clear, this doesn't mean living joyless, restrictive life. It means being intentional.
Sure. Not
living beyond your means, thinking carefully before major purchases, knowing where your money is going. One of the things, as far as consumer purchases go, if you give it like the 3-day wait, you wait to pull the trigger. Sometimes you realize you don't need that thing as bad as you want.
Right. I like that one. And that helps. That works with me. Sometimes I get impulsive. And so if I'm like, okay, I'm going to not do this now. I have to really make a conscious effort. I want this. I want to buy it right now. I see this, but let's see how I feel in 3 days. In 3 days, I've forgotten all about it. I don't
you didn't need it. Yeah.
Why was it?
With online shopping, it's so easy to just pull the trigger.
It's
so it's important to kind of rethink, do I really need this?
Why is there an Amazon semi-trailer backing up to my house? I don't understand.
Oh, that's not just my house. No.
I'm going to have to buy a pallet jack? I don't understand.
Docking warehouse.
I'm going to have to install a dock.
Yeah. But another point from the article that I think often gets overlooked is protecting yourself from cybercrime. It's a part of a sound financial strategy. We talked about online shopping. So online security breach can set someone back significantly. And so it's worth taking seriously.
Yeah. And I know, you bring that up and it's like, oh yeah, people talk about, avoiding scams and things. Yeah. And I've heard that one, but it's not something people would connect with building a solid financial strategy or retirement plan, but it does make sense. You have to consider it.
For sure. Yeah. It's a piece there. And then let's go on to step 4 here. Crafting a strategy for the long term. This one's really close to my heart. The article points out a study that found 59% of adults have a retirement savings plan. And of those, about half expect to live comfortably on what they've saved. So that's kind of a sobering number. But here's a piece I want to leave listeners with today. Financial independence means nothing if your health isn't there to enjoy it. So building wealth matters, but not at the cost of your well-being. So the goal is that life's financial secure and worth living, and the systems we've talked about today are designed to help build that exactly without burning yourself out in the process.
Exactly. And what a great note to end on, Ashton. Financial freedom, it's not just about money. It's about the life that money makes possible, right?
Yeah. It's no good to have that financial freedom in retirement if your health isn't there. And so to stress and, work 60 hours a week to, try and build that financial freedom, or again, stress over that budget.
Yeah.
That's where this anti-budget should be a little less stressful.
Sure.
And it's actually the budget we use in my household. We make sure we save first, and then again, you have that guilt-free spending. And it's a lot less tracking. And it's kind of silly because I'm a numbers guy. But again, I'm also a long-term financial planning guy. And so, knowing that we put away the 20% a month into our retirements.
You don't have to worry about the day-to-day then.
Correct. Yeah. Then you're less concerned about that day-to-day.
All right. Well, hey, we're out of time. Let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, if you have any questions about retirement, your financial strategy, you're staring down that you're 50 plus and you're looking at retiring in the next 5-10 years, give our office a call, 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703. Visit our website, pankoninfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com.
Well, thank you so much, Ashton. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Pankonin Financial Perspective with Ashton Pankonin.
Thank you for joining us for Pankonin Financial Perspective. Don't head into retirement without a plan for both your finances and your health. For more information, contact Ashton Pankonin at Pankonin Financial Group at 952-873-2703 or visit pankoninfinancialgroup.com. Join us again soon for another episode of Pankonin Financial Perspective. Advisory services are offered by Ashton Pankonin LLC DBA Pankonin Financial Group, an investment advisor in the state of Minnesota.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.